I have been a meditator for more than 10 years. It has been my number one practice. It has literally saved my life twice, and it has consistently won out as the most effective tool for me. Because of my passion, I have also taught over 10,000 people to meditate, started a meditation app, and I have recorded over 100 guided meditations to help guide other people. So you can probably understand how shocked I was when meditation stopped being effective for me. Here's what happened. Like most people in the world, 2020 was a hard year. Not only did I go through the shutdown of normal life like the rest of the world, it was really just the beginning of a series of personal traumas that occurred for me and my family in the following 3 years. Like a loyal devotee, I clung to meditation and my habits as my coping skill through all of the trauma. Some days I even meditated extra long, hoping with all of my heart that it would help me survive another day, hoping that it would help me not want to die because of all the sadness and the heartbreak I was feeling in my personal life that was overwhelming my system. I'm sure meditation was still helping some, but to be honest, because of the personal trauma, I was in a constant state of stress inside my body, and I carried this massive fear of being rejected and losing everything important to me: my family, my marriage, my home, my children, my business, my reputation, my income, and beyond. To make matters worse, I also shared publicly about one of these traumas, and I was not prepared for the rejection that came my way in response. Emails, DMs, rumors, and so many people voicing their utter disappointment in me as a person that suddenly my own community felt unsafe to me. Every time I would go to create a new podcast, I'd have flashbacks of followers condemning me. It was traumatizing, and it was this ongoing inner battle to be true to myself, even at the cost of being liked. My body also went through so much during those 3 years because of the chronic stress. I put on 25 pounds, even though my diet and fitness didn't change. My hormones went crazy, and it probably didn't help that now I was in my 40s and perimenopause symptoms were aggravating things even more. I wasn't sleeping well. I cried every day. I was afraid of going out in public and running into people who knew me because I was afraid that they would judge me or they'd be angry at me. I felt so isolated and alone in my marriage, in my family, and in my work. Nowhere felt safe. And most of all, I felt seconds away from a massive emotional meltdown nearly all the time. On the surface, it would seem that meditation would be this amazing remedy for all of these symptoms. But here's the thing: I was meditating every day, 20, 30, 40 minutes, and it wasn't doing anything for my stress. Now, it did feel good to meditate in the moment, but the second I re entered my real life, I was back to feeling moments away from falling apart again. I was stuck. Or perhaps more accurately would be, I was frozen. It wasn't until reading the book, How to Be the Love You Seek by Dr. Nicole LePera, that I had a breakthrough into what was actually happening for me inside my body. She talks about the nervous system, and this is a topic that I have taught on for years in my meditation classes, but not once have I ever learned a very tiny, important detail that was inside of her book. Most people understand that we have two parts to our autonomic nervous system. First, we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is commonly referred to as our fight or flight system. And second, we have our parasympathetic nervous system, commonly referred to as our rest and digest nervous system. Both of these work together to get us activated and moving when we're stimulated and to help us calm down and regulate when it's time to rest. The challenge is that modern living is often activating, and we can get stuck in that fight or flight stress response. And when we do, it can wreak havoc on our health and our relationships when we stay there long term. Tools like meditation help us to intentionally return to a rest and digest state so that our bodies can regulate again. Fight and flight are the two most commonly spoken about defense stress responses our body can go into. But there are actually two more: freeze and fawn. Fight is when you respond to a threat by confronting it. You might feel angry or defensive, and you get ready to stand your ground. Flight is when you choose to run away or escape from a threat. It is about avoiding danger and finding safety. Freeze is when you feel so scared or overwhelmed that you shut down. It's like being stuck in place, hoping that the danger will pass. Fawn is when you try to please or appease someone to avoid conflict or danger. You might go out of your way to make others happy, even if it means putting your own needs aside. These responses are all ways that our body and our mind react to stress or danger. All of this I knew. All of this I have taught hundreds of times myself. But then she offered a key piece that I was missing. Fight, flight, and fawn are part of the sympathetic response, but freeze is actually both. Freeze is a sympathetic and parasympathetic response. Fight, flight, and fawn are all like pushing on the gas pedal of your car. They're all activating. But freeze, it's like pushing on the gas and the brake at the exact same time. You're activated by a perceived threat, which is the gas pedal, but you also feel hopeless or overwhelmed, so you shut down the brake pedal. In this state, you disassociate, you numb, you freeze. When I read that definition of the gas and brake pedal both being pushed simultaneously, it was like the experience inside of my body for the past 3 years suddenly had words. It made sense. And then she said something even more shocking to me. She specifically said that in a freeze response, meditation is not the tool you need. Wait, what? Is this why all of my meditating was not helping? Because I was in an ongoing freeze response inside my body and I was using the wrong tool to get unstuck? Yes, that is exactly what this means. If you are in a freeze response, meditating or taking long and slow deep breaths is not going to release you from this response. But you know what will? Doing the exact opposite. You need to get activated. Instead of trying to calm down, you need to activate your system. So it's sort of like we're letting off of the brake and we are intentionally pushing on the gas. And then when we're not stuck by pushing both pedals at the same time, then we bring it down by gently pressing on the brake. So she recommended people in a freeze response experiment with breath work, similar to the work of Wim Hof, to activate their system. Now, I just want to note that this is not calming breath. This is activating breath. She described it as a round of this technique as 30 fast breaths in and out through the mouth, simulating like mild hyperventilation, sort of like this. This mouth breathing, rapidly, the circular breath in and out through the mouth, will put you into a sympathetic fight and flight state. So a few days after I learned this, I had this moment of getting triggered by my old trauma. And I noticed that freeze response in my body. It felt like I was being squeezed from the inside and I couldn't breathe. I was frozen. But this time, instead of taking my calming breaths like my past training had taught me, and which didn't work, I did the opposite. I did a round of activating rapid breathing through the mouth. And 30 seconds later, I was shocked at the release I felt from being in freeze. Oh my goodness. How did I not know this? And how I wish I had known this during the past 3 years. What a difference it would have made for me. I would have used the right tool at the right time. But as life has a way of doing, this challenge turned into a massive investigation for me in learning more about trauma responses and the nervous system, and later certifying as a somatic breathwork practitioner. Honestly, I feel like this was a massive breakthrough for me in better understanding my body. Could I actually recognize what state I was in when I felt stressed? Was I in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? And I've noticed that I personally tend to default to a freeze response. My husband tends to default to a fawn response. My son tends to default to fight or flight. And my daughter tends to default to fight. Now, it's not to say that any of us can't experience all the other stress states. We do. But our personalities and our past experiences often influence how we react. So, with that being said, I just invite you to think for a moment about your own past experiences. Which one of these stress states do you tend to default the most to? Do you even know? It's actually an important observation to make about yourself so you can begin to recognize what state you're in. And then you can offer yourself the correct support that you need to regulate your nervous system. Now, just so you know, I did not stop meditating, but I do now approach meditation very differently than I did before. And it's for this reason that I like to often integrate a micro version of breath work into my meditation. If I notice when I'm meditating that something comes up that triggers me, and I notice maybe that I go into a freeze response, or I'm feeling some fear, or I'm feeling some anxiety about something, or maybe I have a memory that comes and I begin to relive some of those emotions that it surfaced. That is an amazing invitation for me to do some activating breath work so that I can fully feel those feelings instead of stuffing them away. So I'll do a few minutes of that activating circular breath in and out through the mouth. This puts me into fight and flight. It revs up my nervous system. And then after those few minutes, I will bring myself back into regulation with some calming nasal breathing in and out through the nose. This awareness has quite literally changed my life. I no longer apply the wrong tool at the wrong time. What a difference this can make. And in this regard, I really do see meditation and breath work as really great companions. They work so well together, but you have to know what works for what time. When we approach healing our past or creating our future, it is likely that we will encounter a part of us that holds some trauma. Trauma is not necessarily what happened to us. Rather, it is more about what occurred to us internally through our emotional experience. So what causes trauma for one person may be totally different than what causes trauma for another person. And I would add that trauma is created when we are not able to complete the body's stress response cycle. The body innately knows how to activate in times of threat, and it knows how to regulate when that threat has passed. This is the stress response cycle: activating and regulating, activating and regulating. But if you're not able to complete that cycle, you will become stuck in an activated state. And what that does is it's going to trap that emotion and that stress inside your body. And if this lasts long term, it can cause many other problems of dis-ease in your life. Now, it's interesting to note, humans are the only species on the planet that experience trauma, with the rare exception of some domesticated animals. And there's a reason for this. In the wild, animals do go into fight, flight, or freeze. But if they survive the stressful situation, their bodies will complete the cycle. Often this looks like shaking, making noise, movement like running or jumping or other movements to discharge the energy. Maybe it looks like grooming themselves and calming their body back down through self-soothing or even taking a rest. For example, let's imagine that there is a deer that is chased by a cheetah. The deer is going to go into a flight response and run. And if the cheetah catches the deer will likely go into a freeze response. It will play dead. This is a form of protection for the body because it will numb the body to protect it from pain. So let's imagine the cheetah decides it's not hungry right this moment, but it wants to save the deer for later. So it momentarily leaves the deer that appears to be dead. When the deer perceives the moment for escape, it flees and it heads back to safety. At this point, the deer will complete that stress cycle through the discharge of pent-up emotional energy. This could look like shaking the body. Perhaps she runs around to help dissipate adrenaline and return to a calm state. Maybe she grooms herself to help soothe and relax. Perhaps she finds a safe spot to lie down and rest, allowing her body to recover. Or maybe if she returned to her herd, she might engage in social interactions that reinforce safety and calm. In a short time, her body is regulated again, and she is peacefully grazing as before, trauma-free. So why do we humans often not complete this cycle? Because of our conditioning, we often don't allow ourselves this very important completion. Some of us may not even know that we need to or that it even exists. Many of us are taught that certain emotions are bad, and so we learn to suppress anger and instinctual responses. Maybe we judge ourselves for internal emotional reactions, and we fear the judgments of others because of what we feel. And so we disconnect from the innate wisdom that our body holds. As we do this, we store the energy inside of our bodies and we stay in an activated internal state. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could just be like the deer and take care of the activated energy as soon as the interaction is over and go on living peacefully? Yet we humans not only do not complete the stress cycle response, but we will complicate things even more with the power of the mind to replay this interaction over and over again. And now we get to re-traumatize ourselves. Remember, the body doesn't know the difference between an external experience or an internal one. It's all the same to the body. So if our activation, let's say, for example, our activation came from getting yelled at by a family member, we don't just get yelled at once. We end up getting yelled at by a family member 1,000 times because we replay that scene over and over again in our mind, and our body relives it all over again and again and again. Can you sense the importance of learning how to let go of the mind and learning how to regulate your body? Part of the reason our mind will replay the events is because it's trying to make sense of what you are still feeling inside your body. But we get trapped in this unending trauma loop. And unless we can intentionally intervene and learn to heal the nervous system and return it to a sense of safety, this loop will continue. This is critical to your ability to be in a state of creation. If your body is in a fear response, you are in contraction. You are in a closed state of being. This is why the affirmations and the mantras or mindset work doesn't always work. If your body does not feel safe, it will not believe your mind. But guess what? If your body does feel safe, those pep talks, those mantras, those affirmations are magical. Nothing is wrong with mindset or affirmations and mantras at all. It's just that they are way more effective when your body is working with you and not against you. Your mind and body need to be one. So many things can put us into a fear state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You likely have relationships in your life that, on a nervous system level, maybe they don't feel safe. This could look like not feeling safe to be your authentic self, to share your ideas or your opinions or questions about the world. This looks like feeling like you need to present in a certain way in order to be loved and accepted, or that you need to do things to keep others from becoming upset or activated. This could look like codependency, people pleasing, or obsessively trying to manage other people's perception of you or their expectations so that everything appears on the surface to be okay. Anxiety is a core symptom of a dysregulated nervous system. Depression can be a symptom of a dysregulated nervous system. At the root of all of this is fear. Whether it's fear of the future, fear of the past, fear of losing control over life, over ourselves, or over other people, or fear of what other people think of us. And when you are in fear, you do not feel safe. To cope, many of us learn to numb our feelings or disassociate from our bodies because it doesn't feel good to be in your body when you're in fear mode, because you're closing off to the divine life force energy that's within you in order to avoid discomfort. To make matters worse, fear will trigger stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol. And we do need these hormones to get us going in the morning and help us to be active and to protect us from real danger. But if these hormones take over, because we're in this activated fear overdrive, you can experience all sorts of dis-ease in your body. In my case, even though my lifestyle habits were totally dialed in, I gained 25 pounds, my health suffered, my relationships suffered, and I couldn't figure out what was happening until I figured out how to repattern my brain and heal my nervous system. To be a creator, you must learn how to feel safe in your own body. You need to know how to nurture yourself. You need to know how to soothe that inner child that becomes afraid by being a loving parent to yourself. You need to know how to feel your feelings and any built up emotional energy in a healthy way so you can complete the cycle and return to that felt sense of safety. And it's in this felt sense of safety that creation happens. You must feel safe to fully be in creation. And this is true for procreation as well. In fact, many times, one of the core reasons for infertility is stress. In other words, not feeling safe. How can your body allow you to create new life if it thinks it needs to defend you from danger? Chronic stress, which really could be caused by any number of stressors in life, puts your body in a fear state. You must feel safe to fully be in a creation state. Creation is a state of expansiveness, and you need your heart and your mind to be open to the infinite possibilities. You can't be in this receiving state to ideas, solutions, or golden opportunities if your body thinks it needs to shut down or defend itself in protection. In this regard, we must learn the ability to self-regulate. Now, there are many wonderful somatic tools that can help you regulate your nervous system. And you may even have a few of your own favorite activities that already help you to regulate. It can be the simplest of things: taking a walk in nature, holding a new baby, snuggling your dog or your cat, walking barefoot in the grass. Yet when it comes to trauma or chronic stress, I personally love breathwork because of its ability to rewire the nervous system and your neural pathways. If my dysregulation comes from a fear pattern that is running over and over again in my life, I don't want to just regulate for the moment. I want to repattern my brain and my nervous system so that it will stop responding to the trigger like it is a life or death threat. Somatic breathwork is often uncomfortable because the activating breath does the job of surfacing emotions that we have not allowed ourselves to feel. So if you attend one of my online breathwork journeys, we spend the first 30 minutes surfacing these emotions through that activating breath and creating space for you to discharge them, just like the deer. You can shake it off, you can cry it out, you can use your voice, and most importantly, you can hold space for yourself to feel the sensations. And while it can be uncomfortable, I firmly believe that the more willing we are to allow ourselves to feel uncomfortable sensations, the more we heal our life. We heal the past because we now allow ourselves to feel it. We allow ourselves to feel what we've not been willing to feel before. And we create the future because we teach our body that we can survive the uncomfortable sensations, that we can feel things in the moment so that we don't have to trap it inside. The final 30 minutes of my breathwork sessions is when we do the repatterning of the brain and the nervous system. This is where we switch to the calming nasal breath. This is when we teach our body that we know how to come back after stress. We teach our body that now we are safe. And for me personally, breathwork has been the most impactful tool that I have used to heal from trauma and to get out of being in that functional freeze state of fear in my body. Meditation is still a really important tool for me, but now I know when it's not going to work, and I know how to bring in the tool that will. Breathwork and meditation actually make for quite the dynamic duo, holistically accounting for what your body needs in the moment. One of the most important things that my body needs and your body needs is to feel safe. I often refer to the work of psychologist Abraham Maslow in his iconic pyramid of the hierarchy of needs. At the bottom of the pyramid is the need for safety. And I've typically thought of this as safety from physical dangers in our environment. For most of us modern humans, the bigger threat to safety is not knowing how to regulate our own nervous system. So even if there's no physical threat, our body is responding like there is. And it's vitally important that we learn the skill of regulating the nervous system so that we can not just know in our mind that we're safe, but we truly deeply feel it in our bodies. This is the power of working with the body in co-creation. This is the power of starting at the level of feeling. I'm happy to report that my life now is graciously so much more peaceful than it was before. And though I would never want to live through those 3 years again, I have to say my life now is even better than it was before the trauma happened because of what the trauma taught me and the healing tools that it required. It was worth it. The universe is kind of clever like that. Remember, you are a creator. Feel, be, see, say, and do. The light in me honors the light in you. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. If you are curious to experience a breathwork session for yourself, I would love to invite you to join me for one of my monthly online breathwork sessions. You can find our most recently scheduled one in the show notes of this episode or go directly to brooksnow.com/events. I would love to see you there. You are a creator. Now go co-create something great.